All right, buckle up, everybody, because Florida politics, well, they're rarely boring. But things just got really interesting. You see, Senator Marco Rubio, Florida's senator since, what, 2011, is stepping down to become the Secretary of State. In the new Trump administration, we're diving deep today into a recent piece from CBS News to break down what this means for Florida, who's taking Rubio's place, and why it matters.
Yeah, it's definitely a shakeup. Governor DeSantis has chosen Ashley Moody, Florida's Attorney General, to fill the Senate seat.
Oh, interesting choice. The article even included a picture of Moody speaking at a press conference. But tell me a little more about this temporary fix the article mentioned.
Yeah, so Moody's appointment isn't permanent. You see, Florida has this unusual system where she'll hold the seat until a special election in 2026. However, the winner of that election will only serve the rest of Rubio's term, meaning they'll have to run again in 2028.
Wow. Talk about a political pressure cooker. So what's the thinking behind that system?
It's a balancing act, I guess. Florida wants to make sure that they have continuous representation in the Senate, so they appoint someone right away. But they also want to uphold that principle of voters choosing their representatives, hence the special election. It makes for a pretty wild ride for whoever gets that seat.
That is fascinating. So DeSantis had a few options to fill the seat, right? The article mentioned some other big names being considered.
Yeah, there was a lot of speculation about who he would pick. Laura Trump, the former president's daughter-in-law, was a possibility. DeSantis' own chief of staff and his lieutenant governor were also on that short list.
Makes you wonder what made DeSantis go with Moody in the end. I mean, what kind of message is he sending with this choice?
Well, DeSantis was pretty clear about the qualities that he was looking for. He wanted someone who aligned with Trump's agenda, someone who was committed to cutting spending, willing to take on, bureaucracy. And with a tough stance on immigration, he emphasized the importance of those things. When he made the announcement...
So Moody ticks all those boxes?
It seems so. Her record as Attorney General shows a lot of support for both DeSantis and Trump's policies.
Okay.
And you have to remember that DeSantis specifically highlighted the need for change in Washington, echoing Trump's mandate for change.
That's a great point. So is it safe to say that Moody is essentially stepping into Rubio's shoes, ideologically? I mean, will she be able to hold her own in the Senate? Or is she just an extension of DeSantis' administration?
That's the million-dollar question. She's definitely aligning herself with that branch of the Republican Party. But how she'll actually operate within the Senate, where things are a lot more complex, more nuanced, remains to be seen. It'll be interesting to watch. And see if she carves out, her own path, or remains firmly in DeSantis' orbit.
You mentioned earlier that this system creates a wild ride. For whoever's in that seat, do you think that'll affect how Moody approaches her role, knowing she's essentially campaigning from day one?
It's hard to say for sure, but that looming 2026 election has to be in the back of her mind. Will she play it safe to appeal to voters, or will she be more assertive in pushing DeSantis' agenda?
And how does all of this play into the bigger picture of Florida politics? What are the potential ripple effects that we should be watching for?
Well, for starters, this throws a huge spotlight on the 2026 election. It's no longer just about filling a Senate seat. It's a battle for control and direction.
Right. And depending on how Moody performs, this could really boost or damage DeSantis' influence, especially if he has his sights set on, bigger things.
Exactly. And we can't forget about the other players, the folks who were passed over for the appointment. How will they react? Will they challenge Moody in the special election?
Things are about to get very interesting. So for our listener who might be thinking, okay, this is all very political, but how does it affect me?
Yeah.
Why should they care about this Florida shakeup?
Well, Florida's a swing state with a huge impact on national politics. What happens here sends ripples across the country. This appointment could be a bellwether for the future of the Republican Party. Understanding that gives you insight into the forces shaping the political landscape as a whole.
I love that connecting the dots between Florida and the bigger picture is like a political domino effect.
Yeah, it really does feel like one of those butterfly effect moments. A seemingly small event in Florida could have huge consequences down the line.
Okay, so I have to ask, with all this talk about what Moody might do, what about Rubio? He's been a big player in Florida since, 2011. What's his departure mean for the state?
It's a significant shift. Rubio has been a strong voice on the national stage, particularly when it comes to foreign policy and issues like China. His absence leaves a gap that others will be eager to fill.
And how might this new Secretary of State gig impact Florida politics, even from afar?
That's where it gets really interesting. He'll be operating on a global level, but he's still deeply connected to Florida and understands the political dynamics here. It wouldn't be surprising if he finds ways to exert influence even from a distance.
So we've got this potential power vacuum in Florida with Rubio gone, and a newcomer like Moody stepping in. What are some key things our listeners should watch for as she navigates this new role? What will give us clues about the kind of senator she'll be?
Well, pay close attention to her committee assignments. That's where a lot of the real work gets done in the Senate. Debating bills, crafting amendments, hammering out compromises. Her committee assignments will tell us a lot about her areas of focus and where she might try to make her mark.
Yeah, I imagine her voting record will be telling too, right? How closely does she align with the Trump administration? And does she ever break with the party line?
Exactly. And beyond the votes themselves, it's worth watching how she positions herself within the Republican Party. Is she firmly in the Trump-DeSantis camp, or does she chart a more independent course?
Which brings us to her relationship with DeSantis. Will she be his loyal foot soldier? Or will she try to establish herself as an independent force? That dynamic will be fascinating to watch.
Absolutely. DeSantis is a rising star in the Republican Party. How Moody navigates that relationship could have big implications for both of their careers. It's a delicate balance between showing loyalty and demonstrating independence.
It's like they're both playing a high-stakes game of chess, trying to anticipate each other's moves and position themselves for the future.
And remember, all of this is happening against the backdrop of a constantly changing political landscape. We're heading into the 2026 midterms, and the 2028 presidential election is looming on the horizon.
So much is at stake.
Yeah.
It feels like Moody's appointment is just one piece of a much larger puzzle.
Exactly. And as we analyze each piece, we need to keep asking, how does this fit into the bigger picture? What are the long-term implications? Who are the key players to watch?
And that brings us back to our listener. Why should they care about all this political maneuvering in Florida? How does it connect to their lives?
Well, it's about understanding the forces shaping our world and the people who hold power. What happens in Florida, a key swing state, can have a ripple effect across the nation. It influences national policies that impact everyone. Plus, paying attention to these political dynamics helps you make informed decisions as a citizen.
I love that. Knowledge is power. And understanding how these political systems work empowers us to participate in our democracy more effectively.
Precisely. And in today's political climate, where things can feel so polarized, it's crucial to seek out different perspectives, think critically about the information we're consuming, and engage in respectful dialogue.
Okay, so let's bring it all together. What are the key takeaways for our listener? We've got Rubio out, Moody in, and a whole lot of uncertainty about what comes next.
Yeah, and we can't forget that this is just the beginning. The special election in 2026 is going to be a major turning point, and Moody's actions in the Senate between now and then will be closely watched. The story is far from over.
And there are bound to be some surprises along the way. Florida politics always keeps us on our toes.
Speaking of surprises, let's leave our listener with a thought-provoking question. This CBS News article focused on Florida, but what bigger questions does this raise about the future of the Republican Party?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, are we seeing a shift in power dynamics?
It's like we're witnessing a changing of the guard in real time. And Moody's appointment could be a microcosm of that shift, signaling a consolidation of power around the Trump-DeSantis wing of the party.
Okay, so who are the players to watch then as we head towards the 2026 midterms and even the 2028 presidential election? Could this shakeup in Florida be a sign of things to come on a national scale?
It's certainly worth paying attention to. The 2026 special election in Florida is going to be a major indicator of where the Republican Party is headed. If Moody wins, it could solidify the influence of this particular brand of conservatism.
And what if she loses?
That's a fascinating scenario to consider. A loss for Moody could signal a rejection of the Trump-DeSantis agenda, potentially opening the door for more moderate voices within the party.
So much is riding on this. And speaking of Moody, if she does win in 2026, could we see her on a bigger stage someday? Could she even be a contender for higher office?
Well, a Senate seat is a powerful launching pad, and she'll definitely have the opportunity to build a national profile if she plays her cards right. But a lot will depend on her performance in the Senate and the political climate in the years ahead.
It's almost like we've zoomed in on this one event in Florida, but it's given us this wide-angle lens on the future of the Republican Party and maybe even the country.
Exactly, and that's the power of a deep dive like this, It's not about having all the answers, it's about exploring the complexities, asking the right questions, and connecting the dots between seemingly isolated events and the bigger picture.
So to wrap things up for our listener, what's the one thing they should take away from all of this?
Pay attention to Florida. What's happening here is more than just, a local political drama. It's a microcosm of larger trends and power shifts. That will have a ripple effect across the nation. Keep an eye on the players. Watch how the story unfolds, and think about what it means for the future of American politics.
It's a reminder that politics is dynamic.
Yeah.
And ever-evolving. And sometimes the most fascinating stories
Yeah.
start in the most unexpected places.